It's the most wonderful time of year again in the sartorial kitchen. Today's theme, eggnog. I'm kicking things off with a classic bread pudding with lots of citrus accents and orange caramel, and topping things off with a eggnog pie topped with whipped cream. So why don't you pull up a chair and dine with me?
Welcome back, everybody. Yes, the holidays are upon us. And that means it's baking time in the sartorial kitchen. So I'm just cutting up some bread right now. As you can see, this is brioche. Why brioche? Because I'm making a bread pudding. And brioche is like the best for bread pudding. Today's theme is eggnog. So I'm using eggnog as my dairy. So there we are with the brioche. That is just one loaf of brioche. Nice big pieces. So I want this to be really hearty. Also that we got the bread. Now let's work on our custard. For that I'm going to need about 4 eggs. I always start with the eggs. Why? That's right, so we can watch for eggshells. So we'll just come in here and just one at a time. Just carefully crack those in. And our carton makes the perfect receptacle for the used shells. And we'll be using the other 8 from my other dish. So we can just plop that right in the trash when we finish. All right, there we go there with the eggs. Let's go ahead and get this started here. Just a little zhuzh with my whisk, just to break up those yolks and bring it all together. I'm cracking the eggs in here so I can watch for, not only to watch for the eggshells, but to measure everything, and then just pour it over the bread when I'm ready. So you'll see the 4 eggs give us about a cup of liquid, and then I need 2 cups of the eggnog, so I can measure until we're up to the 3-cup mark. Eggnog, it's one of those things, you only get it really around Christmas time. I thought it would be something really unique to bake with. And of course you can make your own eggnog if you want. You want to separate all the yolks and the whites and do all that prepping. But the store-bought's just fine. The only difference between the homemade and the store-bought, the homemade usually has booze in it, where the store-bought does not. But we're going to change that here because I've got my good old pal Southern Comfort here. And I've already used him to rehydrate some candied citrus. That's orange peel. That's going to be our other flavoring here. And that looks pretty good, guys. That's a nice thick custard. But we're not finished yet. We want this to be a sweet bread pudding. So I'm also going to be adding a nice level cup of sugar. And to make it even more decadent, about a cup of brown sugar. Lightly packed. Beautiful. And just slowly let that dissolve into our custard mixture here. Especially that brown sugar likes to clump up, so I just kind of tap it down like that and then slowly stir that in until it's well incorporated. Alright, let's finish this guy up. A pinch of salt. Desserts need salt, it balances out the sweetness. And some cinnamon and nutmeg. I want about a teaspoon of cinnamon. This needs to be a really flavorful custard. And about a half teaspoon of nutmeg. It's stronger, so we don't use quite as much of the nutmeg. Some vanilla extract. A couple teaspoons. And a couple teaspoons of this here. It's just going to add a nice richness, real depth of flavor. And we can just measure with the cap. You can smell that. It smells nice and boozy. That's going to bake out, so it won't be so strong. You'll just be left with that kind of rich, spiced flavor that the rum brings. And then again, we're just going to slowly incorporate all this rich flavor in here. Alright, that looks good. Now for the orange. So I've got a whole orange here. I'm going to be zesting, but I want to roll it first to release those juices. So I'm going to use the juice of the orange. We're going to make a lovely orange caramel to top this with. It's going to be so decadent. That's good. And then we'll come in here with our zester. And this is a pretty large orange, so we may only need to zest about half of it. Guys, I just love the smell of citrus. You really wake up those oils and the rind when you zest it, and it's just so fragrant. It really fills the kitchen with some lovely aromas. And then you can see all that zest left over. Just dump that in. And then for my citrus here, I'll pour that out. I don't want all that. This tube would be too much booze. And then we'll dump that in. I thought it would add a nice textural component and really bring home the orange that we've got going on here. And then we're going to finish stirring that. And then we can pour the custard over our bread. And I just like to continue to whisk a little bit while I pour that, just to make sure that it's all well incorporated. You can see all those spices in there, and yeah, just nice and rich. Make sure we get all of that out of there. Beautiful. All right, this is a dirty job here, so I got some gloves on. So I don't want my hands getting all sticky. I'm just gonna come in here, turn all this over. The trick to a really good bread pudding is to really let the bread soak up that custard. And it smells so good. The orange and the rum. Okay, that looks pretty good. So, use one of my gloves here. And we'll get my butter here. And this is just softened butter. I always leave out a little thing of butter on my countertop here, so it's accessible. And then I'm just going to kind of just give it a little squeeze, and it breaks up. I didn't want it quite melted, or I would have melted it into the egg mixture. And then yeah, we'll just stir that in too. And I'm gently doing this. I'm kind of folding the bread over itself into the custard, because I don't want to mush the bread into a bunch of pieces. I want it to be nice, thick, hearty pieces. All right, that is gorgeous. Okay, so let's get our dish out here. I pre-greased, and then I'm just going to dump this right in. Oh, beautiful. I left the glove on, so if there's anything that sticks behind in the bowl, we can grab that out, and then I'm just gonna spread this out to a nice thin layer. That way it cooks evenly. Oh, that looks so good, guys. Okay, we can lose this other glove now. My oven, I preheat it to 375. This is gonna bake for about 40 to 45 minutes. I will set the timer, and we'll give it a little check and see if it's ready yet.
Then we can start on our eggnog pie.
All right, while that bread pudding cooks off, we're gonna work on an eggnog pie. I'm starting with my custard. So I've got in here my eggnog. I'm just bringing up to a simmer. I don't want it boiling, but I want it where it just starts to foam on top. And then I've got my eggs. So what is great about the double boiler, having the pot, having this bowl on top of the pot is gonna help that eggnog heat up quicker. And then the steam that creates is going to warm this bowl and help me temper the eggs. Because the trick to a good custard is for the eggs to just slowly cook through without scrambling. And I need about 8 eggs. I'm doing 2 batches because I'm using store-bought crust, and you can't buy just one crust. I need to buy 2. So I decided I'll just make 2. I'll have one for me, and I'll have one to take to a family gathering. And if the one I make for me is good, I'll decide whether I take the one to the gathering or not. Yeah, so I just switch to the hand mixer. I want to incorporate a lot of air into these eggs. Add some foamy and frothy. All right. Now to this, it would normally be a cup of sugar, but since I'm doing a double batch, I need 2 cups of sugar. And these are going to get nice and creamy. Yes, that looks beautiful, guys. Nice and creamy. I'm going to go ahead and flavor this while we let our eggnog continue to come to temp. Some more vanilla. Very few desserts I make where I do not include vanilla. So good. And to keep with our classic eggnog flavors here, some more cinnamon, a good teaspoon of cinnamon, and just like before, a good half teaspoon of nutmeg. Since I'm using 2 batches, of course. And that we can just whisk in gently. I don't want to deflate the eggs. And you can see they're already starting to thicken up a little. That's exactly why I'm cooking them this way. Okay. Now one more thing. It's going to help thicken this up and make sure it's good, is some cornstarch. Normally, it would be about a 1/4 cup, but we're making 2 batches, so I'm going to do a 1/2 cup. I think that's good. And just dump that right in. Normally I would sift an ingredient like that, but we're going to be running this through a sieve at the end of it, just in case the eggs have scrambled any, and there's any little bits of lumps. But I am going to go ahead and incorporate this into the eggs on a low heat, on a low speed. I don't want cornstarch to end up all over my kitchen. Alright. And I think we can check our eggnog here and see if that is coming to temp. Okay, let's check this here. Oh yes. See how it's steaming? There's a little bit of bubbling there, but it's not quite boiling. So I'm going to turn that off the heat, and then we're going to temper this egg mixture. It's already a little warm, but we're going to temper it a little further. So you just take a little bit of the eggnog mixture. We're going to slowly pour that in, and then come in here and whisk that up. That warm egg mixture is just going to take the chill, any more chill that is still left on the eggs, and slowly warm them until that it's gotten warmer, and that is good. Then we will take our egg mixture and pour that into our eggnog. Our hand whisk again, and just kind of slowly stir this until it gets nice and thick. You'll be able to tell once it's thickened. Alright, this is looking pretty good. Nice and thick. If you're not sure if it's thick enough, you can always run a little spoon through here and run it through, and it should hold its shape. Now, we're going to bring our sieve back out. Turn that off the heat, and then I'm going to pour this right through here. And that's exactly why we use the sieve, because you may have a little bit of lumping, and that's fine. Some of that's from the egg, some of that's from the cornstarch, but we want a nice smooth custard, so we're just going to run it through our sieve. And we'll set that aside. And then I'm just going to come in here with my whisk and whisk this through. And then you can see it just kind of smooths everything out. Gets out any lumps we may have. Beautiful. Oh yeah, that looks gorgeous. Perfect. And then we'll set that aside. Okay. Now to make sure this is extra luscious, about a stick of butter. I'm just going to break that in half. Normally we would use a half stick, but again, we're doing a double bat. I'm just going to whisk that in, just until it's nice and incorporated. And I would say that is... Oh, that looks beautiful. And then one more thing for this, some whipped topping. And I'm careful with this because I don't want it to like melt and make a mess. And normally I would use half of this and save half for decoration, so I had to get 2 of these. And of course you can make your own whipped cream if you want. It's just sugar, vanilla, and heavy cream in the hand mixer, but my hand mixer is already dirty making this, so I figured it would be easier to just go semi-homemade this time and do our whipped topping. And don't forget the stuff off the lid. I want all that in there. And then I'm just going to kind of fold this in. I don't want to break it up too much. It's going to melt a little because our mixture is still a little warm. That's why I use the cold butter to kind of mellow this out. And then once you kind of break it up some, you can get the mixer back out on a really low speed. And just kind of mix that in. It's going to make it nice and thick and rich. Oh, guys, I cannot wait. This looks so good. Okay, so I'm going to cover this with plastic wrap. And make sure we press down firmly and cover this top layer, otherwise you'll get pudding skin, which is not too appetizing. And then I'm going to let this sit in my fridge until it gets nice and chilled and it has more time to firm up. And in the meantime, we can prep our pie crust. Okay, so here's my pie crust. You're more than welcome to make your own, but why go to all the trouble when Sara Lee does it for you? So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to poke some holes in the bottom here so it doesn't get too done on me and puff up. The holes will kind of close up once it bakes through. And then the top, you can leave it as is, but to give it more of a homemade feel, I like to come in here and just crimp it, and you just kind of, I come in on the insides of it and give it a little pinch. And just kind of pinch in that zigzag pattern, like so. And then it kind of starts looking like you put it together yourself. Yeah, so just like that, come in here and give it a little pinch, like a pinch and push. A little pinch and push, just until you've made it all the way around the pie. And you have to let this defrost before you can do it, otherwise you're going to make a mess. The whole thing's going to break apart and just make a big old mess. And that looks pretty good. We'll move on to our other. These look pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and pop them in my oven. Same temp as the bread pudding, which is perfect. And they're gonna bake for about 12 to 15 minutes. I'm gonna keep an eye on them, make sure they don't get too dark. In the meantime, our bread pudding should be ready to come out. So I'm going to get me a little sheet tray here ready, baking rack ready for that. Oh, doesn't that look delicious? Golden brown. And you should be able to shake it and it doesn't have a lot of give to it. Oh, that's just beautiful. I'm going to let that kind of chillax there. And we'll bake these off. And I will see you guys soon. Okay, let's check our pie crust. It's been about 15 minutes. Oh yeah, look at that golden brown. It's gonna be nice and flaky. So we can turn the oven off good because it was getting hot in here. I'm going to set these aside to let them cool. They need to be nice and cooled before we can put our filling in them, but we can finish our bread pudding. So for that, we're going to start with some our skillet. Let me wipe this off real quick so I'm not making even more of a mess than we already have. Alright, turn this on medium to low heat. And I'm going to need some sugar. About a cup of sugar. And just kind of let that cook down. The sugars are going to start to break down and it gets a little liquidy. And then we'll throw in our other flavors. Okay. Yeah, that sugar's starting to break down now. Nice and caramelized. That looks so good. Alright, so I got a few things I'm going to add to this. I want this to be orange caramel. So we're going to throw a little citrus in here. Just a generous squeeze of the orange. That smells so good, guys. A little of vanilla. Just to really make those flavors sing. Then we're going to turn it off the heat. And we're going to melt in half a stick of butter. And the last little bit of my eggnog here, which is about a half cup. And just kind of slowly melt this in. Okay, that sugar has started to dissolve. It's getting nice and bubbly, so I'm going to turn that down to a simmer, and then we're going to spice it up with a little more of this guy here. About a capful should be enough, and I'm just going to pour that right in. Ooh. Smells really good. So while this continues to thicken up, that will cook off, and it's just going to give us a nice rich sauce. Alright, let's turn this baby off. Move that away from the heat. And I'm just going to come in here and spoon some of this delicious sauce all over the top. Let's get a little more here. If you want to get fancy, you can kind of drizzle it along the plate for good presentation. And I would say that is a nice boozy breakfast or boozy dessert. I am going to come in here and give this a taste. Oh, listen to that. Oh, God, that's so good. So you get the crunch from the outside of that bread there. Those orange pieces I threw in there, they have plumped up nicely and they just kind of melt in your mouth. And just give a nice fragrant texture to this. I get the cinnamon, I get the nutmeg. That caramel is so decadent. I get that lingering quality of the spiced rum, but not that punch in the face of the alcohol. Oh my gosh, this is so good. And so easy to put together. I'm going to finish my piece here, and then I think we should be ready to finish putting our pies together. Stay tuned. Alrighty. Pie crusts are nice and cooled. Our mixture has chilled. And I wrapped it up to keep us from getting any pudding skin. And we do not have any pudding skin. So I'm just going to take my ladle here. Maybe one at a time. And just kind of ladle our pudding mixture into the pie. I think about 4 ladlefuls will do. I want to overfill it. And let that sit. Same thing with this one. And I may have enough for a third pie. Or just to keep for a snack. These are going to go back in the fridge until they have finished setting up. And then we can decorate them. I will see you guys then. Welcome back, everybody. Just pulled my pie out of the cooler, and it is nice and firm now. So I have a second container of whipped topping here. And I'm only going to use about half of this. I'll save the other half for the other pie. Just scoop that right out. And just kind of dollop it in the middle. So you can either pre-decorate this, or you can just leave the whipped topping out as you serve it and just kind of scoop it on top. But I want a nice thick layer. Not too thick, maybe about 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch. And I'm just going to spread it out here until it covers everything. And then just kind of go back and forth with my knife just to get a nice little swirl pattern. Beautiful. And then we're going to dust the top. I've got a little more cinnamon and a little more nutmeg. Cinnamon on here, and I'm using the sieve to catch any clumps, so it just gives a nice little light dusting of that. And then with the nutmeg as well, just to give just a teensy little bit there. Beautiful. And I think it's time to give this a taste. Rip off my knife, or you could use a pie server, whatever you have available. I've already got me a little plate here. I'm just going to come in here. Oh yeah, nice and firm. Make sure we get down through that crust so it comes out nicely. Again, making sure we cut straight through. Okay. And then I'll come here underneath and pry this baby right out. Beautiful. Look at that. Ah, gorgeous. Nice layer of crust, and then you can see the filling. A good pie has nice layers, definite layers to it. And then we'll grab a fork here, and I'm just going to come in. Ah, beautiful. So good. Crust is nice and flaky, has a great texture to it. The filling is so decadent and creamy. You get that rich kind of egg taste of the eggnog, but then I'm getting that vanilla, the cinnamon, nice and sweet, without being too sweet. And the whipped topping just makes it extra delicious. So I'm going to finish up here. I want to thank you guys for joining me as always. Like and subscribe. Hit me up in the comment section. And until next time.
Merry Christmas from the Sartorial Chef.